Welcome to this episode of the Comedy Defect podcast. My name is Winter, I'm a comedian, and this is my show. Those that are new to the show, welcome. Those that are old to the show, thank you for coming back, guys. This is episode 119, and if you followed this podcast from the beginning, it's changed an awful lot. I'd like to thank the first episode, Stu Gill, for doing the first one. It was all over the place, too long, it was a nightmare. And, it found its own legs and found what it was. And I'd like to thank all the guests that have kindly given me time out of their lives to record these podcasts to do with comedy and how they write, what they think of themselves, how they motivate themselves. And some people were very candid about their emotional lives and mental states and other things too in their lives. And we laughed and we found some comedy gold in there, some real gems. And I get to interview some of my heroes. And this episode, I don't think I could do any better as a podcaster. This was just perfect. I mean, there's not many things are perfect, but this one really hit the nail on the head. And this is with Dane Baptiste, this podcast. And he's an excellent comedian, writer, podcaster. He has his own podcast called Dane Baptiste Questions Everything, and that is unfortunately defunct a few months ago, but it's excellent. And he's a really lovely fellow. I gigged with him about 2 years in, and he was about 2 years at the same time, and he went stratospheric career-wise, and he is just a brilliant comedian. He's written for TV, and what a brilliant guest he was. And it just flowed nicely, and I don't think I could do any better. But if I find other guests along the comedy circuit that I would like to interview, I will bring them back. But I'm not going to do a routine of it because it's exhausting. Doing this is just, it's just killing me. And it takes away from writing comedy and it's distracting. I'm doing it all myself. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'd like to thank all the guests and all the people that helped me make this podcast happen. So look, episode 119 will be the last one for a while, but I hope you've enjoyed them. And if you do and did share your episodes that you liked, little nuggets of information, you know what, you can find us I'm there on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook. I'm there as @WinterDominus. That's WinterDominus. And our Facebook, the Comedy Defect Facebook group is there. Join that, like the Comedy Defect page. And, look, there'll be live gig dates in the Comedy Defect podcast group coming up. And maybe the odd episode coming out, but nothing as rigorous and as exhausting as the schedule I've given myself over the few years that have been the recording of these podcasts. I hope you've enjoyed it, man. Let me know if you had. But that's it, man. Everything has a time. But this episode is with the excellent, as a comedian, writer, podcaster. He's a deep thinker. We talk about how he approaches comedy. And there's some absolute comedy gems in here that you'll be able to take home and just think about and build on your own comedy. He writes comedy the way comedy should be written. He's brilliant. Has a heart, has a meaning, and a message. So if you can put all those into your comedy and still make it funny, you're onto a winner. But this is episode 119 with the excellent comedian, deep thinker, TV writer, Dane Baptiste. Enjoy. Dane Baptiste, welcome to the Comedy Defect. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you very much, Winter. How are you?
I'm pretty good, man. How have you managed to cope with the last year and a half or so?
I think mainly through perspective, in that understanding this is not just a uniquely comedy problem in terms of impeding my work. It's been a global shared human experience, man. And I think there's probably a lot more to get out of that rather than just focusing on the comedy aspect of it. And just kind of just day by day, really. Staying in touch with friends and family and loved ones and just trying to do regular stuff. And like I said, the main part has always helped me has been perspective and like knowing, some people do this every day when they're in prison.
This is true. And were you doing press-ups and pull-ups just to kind of get you through, or what were you up to?
A few things. I've tried a few things, like, as you do when it comes to like incarceration. So trying to stay in shape, trying to watch my figure, fashioning shibs and shanks for no one else, but just having them there just in case.
Just to continue with the self-harming, there's no gigs to go to, so there's always good and bad depending on like the distance. What's your favorite shiv that you've carved most recently? Is it bone, or what is it out of?
I got something good out of a nice little chicken bone and stuff. Now, depending on how you want to do it, like, that can also be a biological weapon if you leave some of the marrow in there. But it's like, I don't want to like sour this podcast talking about prison life.
Right, cool.
In my head. Yeah,
in fairness, well, at least you're giving them a little bit of protein as well as, a warning, isn't it? It's like, look, I'm sorry, look, don't, whatever, but you're shanking yourself, I guess, isn't it?
It would be myself, yeah. And in which case, and I'm pretty aware of my nutrition and stuff as well. But it's just for me to know that, if I ever slip and start walking around here like I own the place, that there's people around here that will put me back in my place.
That's nice. That's it. Sort of keep you honest, like, yeah. So, or else if you just need a little bit of an injection of chicken, very, very quickly.
Yeah, you never know. Emergencies can come up out of anywhere. So
right.
I also want to make sure that I'm there for people.
That's it. So you've been. So have you taken up any hobby in the lockdown that you've kind of started that you can? Okay, I need to do this because I haven't had time to do that.
That depends. Would you consider watching box sets a hobby?
I guess, in fairness, it feels like you're doing things, isn't it? It's a list you're trying to get done. I guess it's, you're getting on those lists.
Yeah, I'm getting on lists, but yeah, I've been updating the list and to watch stuff. So just keeping abreast of the developments within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's not really a hobby. So I'd say my main hobby has been cooking. I've been doing a lot of cooking. Right.
Okay. What was the thing that you most reached with?
I went for a black cod in miso.
Okay.
I couldn't get hold of any black cod, so I just used regular cod. But yeah, black cod in miso sauce was something I've been trying, which is it's kind of very haute cuisine. But it's getting there. It's still a work in progress. And I've also, in very stereotypical fashion, perfected my fried chicken recipe.
Right.
Why not? Yeah. Why not?
Mate, you got to be done. You got to have, every family's got to have their own special recipe for that kind of thing, man.
You have to, yeah. But it's doing rave reviews. And it's one of these things where I've just been like, look, in the event that we are on the cusp of some kind of post-apocalyptic state of being in this country or in the Western world, then I have all the skills and faculties in order to prove myself useful in a whole new world. Jokes
don't really hold up in the apocalyptic dystopian nightmare that could potentially happen in the future. This is true. We're the first to go, aren't we? We're expendable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. I personally feel like we are extremely important, but we just live in a society that doesn't recognize that being able to dispense the best medicine is almost as important as dispensing a vaccination. Yes, a vaccination will help you to survive, but what kind of world do you want to live in without laughter? And that's where we, as funny doctors, come in.
That's very true. It's like send in the clowns, it's like Patch Adams was the kind of the sort of Hollywood version of that, wasn't he? If you ever been in the corporate world, you kind of go, oh right, you kind of get kind of brainwashed for a bit because you like the money, it kind of like regular, and you kind of go, right, okay, I'd like to move up to the maybe a senior position of some kind, and then you go, I wonder why I didn't get that. Because weirdly, no one wants a clown to be their middle manager or like hire manager or CEO clown. Oh, the clown, who's CEO of the company? This clown right here. No one wants that walking to a shareholders meeting or anything like that, do they?
No, they don't really. I think because people are aware that as well as having the same capacity for management or leadership, we can also ridicule people that don't do the job very well. I think this is one of the reasons why you're seeing so much vitriol towards like comedians in terms of satire, this whole tend to cancel. We live in a world that people are so sensitive and people are so rigid in their political and social dispositions that to challenge them, which is our job to do so. It's too much for people nowadays. Like people find it very hard online to like take the position of fool or to apologize if their perspective is proved to be false. Yeah. Whereas comedians, that's what we do. We constantly challenge that. So I think it makes people very intimidated a lot of the time.
With the situation we're at the moment, maybe the fact that we're so disconnected from being actual human interaction that when someone disagrees with you, it's too much, isn't it? They just go, well, I don't know how to deal with this emotion. I'll just hide behind my phone or behind that screen or whatever it is. So it's like if you make a mistake in actual real life, because they're not used to doing that. So it's like it's repetition, isn't it? So if you don't have that actual interaction, you get thrown off, and like no one wants to, just people avoid it more and more and more and become more and more insular.
Definitely, yeah. I think a lot of time, especially because now what has happened is, as we're seeing this marrying of human consciousness with artificial intelligence, this idea of trying to get the human thought pattern down to an algorithm it's effective potentially for like digital marketing, and it can work in terms of that effect, but I don't think it's an effective way to map the human mind. And I think the effect it's having on us is that, like you said, people are used to being able to follow their same algorithms, and algorithms will suggest to them what groups they should be members of, what threads they should be members of, what discourse they should participate in, which is how you kind of get echo chambers. Echo chambers can be good because they can give you a sense of solidarity. But the problem is, like I said, they make you become very insular. And so what would normally be perceived as a contrary point of view, or, constructive criticism, is perceived as just like direct opposition, because that's how binary language in which artificial intelligence speaks. It's zeros and ones, so it's all in extremes. And human beings, our minds aren't particularly mature on social media, for example, so that when anything that we perceive as criticism is like we overreact, because it's like we're not used to criticism in that capacity. And it's because the other reason why is because I theorize it's like, you think about how long we've had social media, not just the big three, but like, we're far back as having MSN or like, chat rooms. That's been maybe over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. That means our culture is very teenaged and very adolescent on social media. So we tend to react almost like teenagers to any kind of criticism. Like, no, normally when you're a young kid and a young girl's going out and her mum says, I'm not sure, you maybe should take a jacket. Why? Because I look like a fucking whore? How dare you shame me? So they go crazy. And it's like, so people get very very, very defensive about stuff.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's like, so for me, it's kind of like watching human consciousness be at its high school stage.
Yeah.
Playing out alongside artificial intelligence. So we're all going like to AI high, and it's just whether or not we're able to graduate.
Yeah. With that in mind, because I first met you like in, I think about 2013, I think, when you did Daphne Barham's above is it the Roundhouse, that gig? Yeah, that's when I first saw you. And like, when I was only a start, I was maybe 2 years in or so. There was a motorbike went by outside, and you were like, and you just made some riff to whatever the motorbike was. And it was a hard gig to play, but you just were so natural and just, offhand with your confidence and comedy style. And I was like, wow, that's great, man. But like, it was just, you played it really well. But that looks like that was only like a year into your comedy career. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was still pretty new, but I had actually dipped my toe into the comedy circuit a few years prior, and then before going back to work, so I previously worked in media sales.
Right.
And I feel like I just arrived at a point where, I think we all have that epiphany where we decide what we really want to do with our lives, or want to actually try something different. But for me personally, it was really just taking a look at the state of economics in this industry as well, where I was like, I just don't really see how this could work in real life long term. So there was just a real process, I guess, of like self-discovery, where I was just I guess what I refer to as unlearning, and just ideas that I had, preconceived notions I had about the way the world works, the way economy works, the way the developed world works. And I just became kind of disillusioned. But it was very helpful because I felt like that discovery helped me, because I was kind of like, observational comedy is really about talking about how you see the world. And I just really wanted to make sure that I retrained my eye to be able to, because I think for me, for comedy, and I think for all art in general, it involves you being able to be aware of the superficial differences and phenomena in society. But I think it's scratching the surface where you get the best art. So I took the time to, I suppose, really learn about the world I live in before I decided I'd go on stage and opine on it. So yeah, there's a lot of just reading and just a lot of learning. And I think comedy is great for that as well, because it in itself can be a very massive anthropological study. And so yeah, when I came back, it was just like, I felt like I'd done gigs before and I was winging it, but I wanted to come back with a bang and be like, just apply myself and see what happens if all the time, most human beings and all of our normal familial and social and economic or employment obligations, we put a lot of effort into those things. And I just wanted to ask myself the question, if you took all of that gusto and energy and put that into something you actually enjoy, how far could it go?
Yeah.
So it's all a journey of self-discovery, and I don't think I have any more superior or prioritized right to my status in comedy than anybody else. It's just I want to be able to, like, I suppose this is what I've discovered, and I'm sharing that with the world as well. So somewhat, people say knowledge is power. So I try to be so much of a knowledge socialist and share that power with people, because I think if I was myself arriving at what I consider to be a bit of an existential crisis or a fork in the road of my life, where I wanted to give it meaning, I imagine that is a sentiment shared by most human beings that want their life to have purpose. So I guess that's definitely part of I guess that's kind of the subtext of everything I want to try and do in comedy is just to be, asking people what if,
Yeah.
and like with my podcast myself, I have question everything. I think that's always the first stage of being able to change your reality is to question it first. So I guess that's what I've always tried to encourage with my material.
Right. So you're just really honing in on the self-awareness of you and the world around you and incorporate into your material, which is very, very hard to do, to balance those two things out without making it not funny at all.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm aware that like there is a fine line sometimes between social commentary and I guess
Lecture.
and lecturing, exactly. Yeah. So it's always that line where it's like, I want this to be enlightening and I want this to be thought provocative, but this is not my TED talk in it. It's just a comedy set. So
yeah, totally. That's it. I want laughter, not applause, please. Well, both actually is fine. Equal amounts. But like so you did media sales. I mean, did you do performance in college and then you went to media sales? How did you get into that?
I got into university. I think my first job was at a call center where I just kind of took a job over the summer just to enjoy having money after graduating. But I think initially I got into media sales because the description of it did give this implication that it was creative, which was not necessarily the case. But I think myself and like with most people, once you finish university, and I think I found like most people, I didn't have a degree that was legal, clerical, or medical, or had any kind of real specific competence.
Sorry, what did you do, Dane?
I did business studies.
Oh, right.
Which in itself is a social science and has actually been very beneficial to, studying and interpreting, social phenomena and having that applied to work. But it's still quite a vague thing because all businesses need a manager. So, you're not really specializing. And I ended up in media sales largely because I didn't know anybody in any other industry that I actually wanted to get into. So I would have no idea how to pursue it. And I guess somewhere along the line, like most people who would have been a bit naive in higher education, I forgot that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so I was able to get any positions or internship and have that be able to be provided by somebody. I guess when I was considering what I actually wanted to do with the supposed number of different competencies I gained in university or in education, I didn't really see any clear jobs which would, allow me to kind of employ all of those tricks. And I think with a lot of people that get involved in the service industry, particularly in London or in sales, I think we all have a number of somewhat vague and ambivalent jobs, whether it's sales assistant, sales manager, account manager, project manager, project assistant, project supervisor, admin assistant, data entry, data administration. Yeah. It's like we all just sit in front of a computer and put shit in an Excel spreadsheet, really.
Yeah, that's right.
And and again, it's like, I guess that it was that I always use, it's the zombie apocalypse job center in it. That's what I try to think of myself in economy. Like it's the post-apocalyptic job center. If this ended tomorrow, or we had to go back to subsistence living, what am I contributing with this stuff? And I was like, not much really. But this media sales is, I think it was it's really just a stopgap for people who may not necessarily have direction or not really have any, jobs that are particularly specialized. Yeah, and I think it's just the money is just quicker than most, I think.
I met a lot of people who did media sales. I even, you see loads of adverts for in the Metro or like, any of those papers that come around. You're like, oh man, that looks like like you're creative. You get to design like sort of products or you get to pitch products and stuff. And it seems like a lot of stuff that you'd be like, oh, that sounds like fun. But it's cutthroat as hell and it's vacuous, even more vacuous, isn't it?
I mean, definitely. I mean, and I guess that was an epiphany I reached very early, is that the only reward you get for hitting your sales target is that your target will be put up. Because that's the only reward you get. That's the thing. It's like you have to think. There's no zenith point where you're like, I've achieved something. Like if you are an athlete or you're a sprinter, you're the idea is that you win an Olympic gold medal or you break a world record. There is at least there is some quantitative benchmark you can reach that says, oh, I did this, and so this is what happened. In the same way that like if you're a musician or an artist, like you might perform at a particular venue or you win some kind of plaudit. And there are plaudits that come with sales, but essentially, it's still the same thing again and again and again. And yeah, for me, it was kind of like, there are statues for people that like, start organizations. There are statues for people that create, ways of making human beings more healthy. There are no statues of any salesmen anywhere. And I was like, people won't even care about what you've done. And so I was just like, and I just realized, like I said, with people that work in media sales, I think it's for people that who are very hardworking, who are very savvy people and very adaptive. But yeah, I think a lot of people that just haven't had the privilege of having people, you know, really look at and match their skills to a job they actually want. And I think, you know, it's for most people, like, you know, a lot of us have dreams, but rent has to be paid in the meantime.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
yeah, I think that's what helps how people end up getting into it.
And like, so do you think any of those skills of Excel has really helped you get organized as a comedian?
I would say so much the data entry part, not always the same. But at the same time, when you first start out and you're trying to chase for gigs and send out emails to promoters and stuff, being able to get over that monotony, like sales definitely helps with that. There's very much a numbers game in that respect. And I guess it's the cold call as well. So I guess the idea is that you have to bring people to your way of thinking or try and gain some agreement. And that's almost like what it's like when you're doing like a 5-minute set. If you're with a sea of other comics and you're trying to stand out in the space of 5 seconds, then you do need to be able to be very orally adept to be able to bring people down to your way of thinking in 5 minutes, but also distinguish yourself from the other salespeople, so to speak.
So you had the business down, and then the funny. Did it come later, or did you do like a performance in school and then in college, and then you did your degree?
I think it was a mixture of both. I think when I was in primary school and I discovered comedy, it was one of those things where, you know, we do the kids' assembly, and I was allowed to do a skit by myself because I think I was perceived as actually being quite disruptive, and then it was like, well, give you a go. It was just really weird in a way that it's like I'm not the you know, they acted as if I'm the kid with, like, you know, special needs and stuff, and I went to school with a kid that threw a cricket ball in a teacher's face.
Oh wow!
Right? And it wasn't me. Like I used to see kids like having to be held by all their limbs to be to sit in the hall or put in detention. Like it wasn't like I needed Ritalin and stuff, but they had this thing where it's like he's disruptive because I just question things as a person, and it's not I don't respect rank, but I don't award people, you know. I won't concede under someone's rank if they're not working towards my benefit. So I get it, you're my teacher, but if you were my teacher but you're an alcoholic or you're abusive or like, then I'm not going to listen to you just because your name says Mr. Whatever. So
you haven't earned my respect, right?
Yeah, I haven't earned respect, and I guess, and then the funny thing is that when I began this process of unlearning and trying to do reading and become a better social commentator in comedy, I read a book called Weapons of Mass Instruction by a guy called John Taylor Gatto, who used to work in the American education system as a teacher. And he was like, it's absolute fucking bullshit. And once on reflection, I was like, no wonder I always got in trouble in school, because it's things like raising your hand before you speak, which I guess on the one hand is a part of etiquette. But when you watch like politicians in parliament, they don't do that. If they hear something they don't like, you just hear them people murmuring and going, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, if these people govern our country are not forced to observe the same level of etiquette and discourse, why do I have to do it? And the reason why is because it's training you from a very young age to concede to authority without question, and only to raise your hand when you question. And then even like the idea that like when you're in school, the bell goes and you're like, well, I'm done here and I'm going to leave. My teacher goes, you can't leave, I'm not finished speaking. But then if you don't get into your other class in time for the other beeps, you're in trouble. And I'm just like, well, that's just fucking Pavlovian that I move when I hear a bell or a buzzer. It's like, you know, when people hear the whistle when they go back into the factory. So again, you're getting used to almost having a Pavlovian response where it's like, you can be involved in a conversation. If you're involved in a thread of a conversation and you're getting to the point where your argument is becoming valid, then the buzzer goes, the teacher goes, that's enough, kids, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm not finished speaking because we're supposed to be getting to a point. And so you can't end the conversation there, but the idea is that you concede to authority in the same way that like you learn, then if you learn, you only leave when someone says so. It's like you're at work. If it's 5 o'clock, you are contracted legally. I can leave at 5 o'clock as a human being. But your manager can lean on you and be like, oh, you should maybe stay a little bit longer. Who the fuck are you, buddy? Like, your kids don't listen to you. I'm not going to fucking listen to you at home. Like, and that's the thing. So I guess I was, allowed me to kind of, having skits at school, it was like, they just went surprisingly well. And I guess like the idea, not so much as, oh, everyone's looking at me, because I really could avoid that, to be fair. I was very shy, but it was more, I like the freedom of doing what I want and saying what I want to say, and not having an authoritarian suppress me because I intimidate them with my speech or they think I just do what they say. And I think that was in primary school. I think that was my what I enjoyed most about comedy. And you know, I guess it's also, I think, I was the only black kid in my class. And I think a lot of the time, and I think it's the case for most people of color or immigrants, they're like, once you experience some form of discrimination, it kind of takes away from your innocence. And I think, you know, even when it comes to sex or even sexual trauma, people don't forget their first time. And I guess we all make an existential choice in how we're going to deal with this or rationalize our existence within a discriminatory world. So for me, you know, I can't fight every teacher or every person that calls me a racist slur. But again, comedy and ridicule proved to be even more effective because, if I retaliate physically, someone can always say, well, he was the initial aggressor. But if I'm able to use comedy to ridicule you and your racist notions, you can't really defend against that. And neither can a teacher, because I'm not openly abusing them, and you can't really arrest me for making fun of you. And so I found comedy to be so useful in that respect. And then primary school was then a weird culture shock whereby I went from being the only black kid in my class to being one of 9, and then being in a very multicultural school that was located in a very multicultural area, and being a bit older and having a bit more independence that I had than I did when I was in primary school allowed me to kind of see more people from my community. But then it was a bit of a culture shock because I wasn't used to certain elements or certain nuances within the Black British community that I wasn't necessarily aware of, because I grew up with my family, but my parents are like first generation, whereas some of my friends were second generation. So there was maybe certain aspects of more liberalism or more anglicized platitudes them and their parents may have had words the same as my own, and understanding new words and new nomenclature from parts of my culture I wasn't privy to, because I'd gone to Huddersfield and see my family up north. Right. I'd go to America sometimes and see my family there, but I wasn't that aware of my West African contemporaries and friends from other small islands and stuff. And some of my friends, although they are black and would be considered a black Caribbean, they've never even been on a plane. Yeah, it was kind of a culture shock. And again, sometimes, especially with your adolescence, you can see in London the plight of the, urban youth violence. And, again, being, kids at one point are told that you're not allowed to vote until you're 18, but like at 15, you got to pick your subjects that are going to dictate how the rest of your professional life is going to go, which is just crazy. And so, again, for me, I guess it was like, well, that's, my teenage angst is the same as everybody else's. And rather than, experimenting early with like substances and stuff like that, again, comedy was how I was able to process that. You're a young guy coming into your own, your adolescence, puberty and all the rest of it. And how can I speak to girls? Yeah. And I'm going to come from a large amount of women in my family, so I'm not going to be respectable. I can't feed into any misogynistic culture because I've seen what happens on the other side of that. So comedy was always my shield in that respect. Difficult situations of meeting new people or tense situations. Again, I would rather use comedy. It's much more effective than trying to match hostility with other hostility.
Of course. So
it was always just my go-to. And I think for most people, it's all of the maxims or affirmations we have in society. If you don't laugh, you'll cry. One day you look at this and you'll laugh. Like even you're a comedian and someone goes, "What's wrong, mate?" And you go, "Oh, my wife left me for my brother." Oh, one day you're gonna get some good material out of this. If I wasn't a comedian, you would ask me to get therapy and say I'd need help or to get Prozac. But when it's me, it's you get some good material out of this. Yeah. So again, it was always it's been a crutch, but it's also been like my armor, but it's also been my pillow, but it's also been like my jet engine. So it's just been, I guess it's a part of my being, I should say. Oh,
that's great. That's it's just your strength and weakness at the same time. That's amazing.
Exactly that. Yeah. Exactly.
It's like that's. But like, did you find that when you're in school that your skits, were they based on the same sort of angst that you were just speaking about?
I think some of it, but I think it would have been I guess my comedy and how that's evolved has been in the same way that my understanding of the world has evolved. So it would have some of the differences that I would have maybe spoken about would have been very superficial because they were the only differences I was aware of. But again, I think even when you scratch the surface of the society and the veneer of society as it appears, then you see the cracks and you see certain elements and certain flaws. And so I think my material now is me still dealing with those issues, but being able to do so with more experienced eyes. And I think most people may not have taken the time or had the time to do the same level of painstaking research I have to work out why we are the way we are and why things are the way they are. So a big part of that is me, again, really coming back with my findings. But really just, I guess, always doing that under the pretense that why do we take these things so seriously? Why do we take something seriously? And why do we not take something so seriously? And, it's like, I guess I always try to go back to that. When you have like a toddler in the back of a car and they first start going, why? And why this? And why? And why? And why? And how come? And how come? I don't know. I'm not a dad, but I always think one day, if I'm ever in that position, I really want to be able to answer those questions. That drives my how I devise my material and stuff as well, is that I really want to be one day, if I'm an uncle or a father, where's the kid like, why is this? Or why is this? Or why is this? Because I feel like, especially wherever happens, this child, if I'm an uncle or a father, I will have a child who will be black. And, like myself, they may get to this existential point where they question themselves or the world they live in, because unfortunately they live in a society which suggests to them that there are elements of their being that they should question. And so I guess it's not a question I went to my parents with, because I was like, my God, my dad was 17 when Martin Luther King was assassinated. So the fact that he's not brought it up, there's a reason for that. And I imagine this is probably not good bedtime listening for a child.
Yeah.
Like, there's many horror stories you could read to a child, but to tell a child that just because of who you are, there are people that want to fucking kill you, probably not something you want a complex you want to give your kids.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I recognize that I think I have a moral responsibility to use the opportunities and abilities I have to articulate that to the same people and people at large, because it's not like, I didn't have white friends, or I don't have friends of different colors, and I've been privy to a number of experiences which I feel like if a lot of people had them, it would broaden their perspective and their approach to certain situations. And so really, again, it's just about me relaying that, where, even within my own community, if people hold, let's say, for example, some homophobic views or some conservative Judeo-Christian views, which may marginalize another group, like, for me, it's about being like, well, I have directly been around people from these extractions, and these are the parallels between us and them, and here's why. And by that same token, here's why you could never hold these views to people, because, I think at the end of the day, I guess it's my biggest part of discovery of late has been realizing that we're all beings of consciousness, and there's a lot of things that human beings try to, I guess, both to individualize, and there's a lot of things that we do that we think of in terms of possession. I know I've been rambling on this answer, yeah, but for example, I'll make it a bit more succinct, sorry. I remember listening to an interview from an Indigenous Australian guy, an Aborigine guy, and he said the problem with this world is that when we had our civilization, we didn't have a concept of mine. And I remember when I was younger and about to study business, I was like, what do you mean? That sounds stupid. No wonder you lost everything. Like, come on, bruv. You have to be vigilant. You got to be vigilant, bruv. Like, it's like the white man will rob you, bruv. It's yours. It's your land, bruv. What are you thinking about? Money's what counts. That used to be my mentality because, and it came, I guess it came from a place where I perceived it to kind of be like, benevolent. I'm like, in a system is that we have to take our place within the system as well. Whereas now I'm somewhere where I'm like, now I understand what that means. When I look at like human beings and our interaction with the world and nature, not to say the world, but with nature, and especially how we've been forced, especially over the last year, to remember that we are not distinct nor above nature, and that our interaction with nature is not one of what we refer to as a superior species or as a dominant species, but it's a symbiosis where we interact with other organisms on this planet to create an ecosystem. And I think that's why there's no concept of mind, because there's nothing that anyone really owns other than our own minds. And so, for me, it's kind of like you are the person who's in control of your own mind, will, and soul. And so everything I do, that should always be my master of self, should always be my priority.
And so is there anything that you do to protect that? Because it's so hard to go, there's so many thoughts that are being projected these days. So what do you do to continually remind yourself of what you are and who you are then?
I think it involves a lot of personal honesty. I think comedy definitely allows for you to do that and be introspective more than most occupations as well. And I think it's all down to personal honesty. I think most people are capable of being able to listen to and process their internal monologue. It's just whether or not people are able to accept the answers that they get when they question themselves. The inability to do so, we know, manifests in just the number of psychiatric issues human beings may have, the projection of our egos, our affiliation with identity politics, and our need for belonging. So I guess I try and do it by always empathy, and social media is very good at that. If you can use it effectively, it can. If you choose to indulge it, social media can be a very quick way of walking in other people's shoes. If I encounter phenomena, not necessarily, because I guess with regressive ideology or like oppressive ideology, I can kind of understand where that stems from. But it's more if I find myself being adverse to a new way of thinking or a phenomena that actually makes me feel uncomfortable or concept that I find discomforting. It's about sitting with myself and being like, why do you feel this way? And really, I guess I always bring myself down to the point where it's like, as a comedian, I try to embody comedy philosophically in that, why are you taking this seriously? Why should you take this seriously? If you are supposed to have a superior skill to everybody else and the aptitude where you don't take stuff seriously, why are you taking it seriously? Why is what that person does problem for you? Like, does it affect you? Does it affect or cause loss to any other sentient being? No, then why do you give a fuck? Let's keep moving. Like, if it doesn't make you hot, cold, money, or cum, Who gives a fuck, Dane? So, yeah.
Do you know what, right? That's great. That's a great thing. Is that, I mean, a few years ago for me personally, is I used to see a lot of these, these posts came up on Facebook and stuff, or like, any social media, is like how they're doing mentally. That would really, would that not trigger me. It just I'm like, why? And then going through it there with you, what you're saying, it's because I know that I can't write something as good as that.
No, but at the same time, it's a weird thing because we've been trained to do that. Like, all of social media asks you, what are you thinking? How you feeling today? And it's crazy because there was a time when if you picked up a calculator and said, how you thinking? How you feeling? You'd be like, no, your fucking business. And also you wouldn't eat. And the thing is, because it's a calculator, if someone wrote a Post-it note or someone wrote on a billboard poster, how are you feeling today? You wouldn't stand up in front of it and articulate how you felt, because you wouldn't be able to see any visual reward for you expressing your feelings.
Yeah.
But we've been trained to give our ghost in the machine, whereby like people can give you likes and stuff, and that stimulates like a serotonin and dopamine release. When really we're supposed to tell people closest to us how we're feeling. Like, it's crazy. We go to social media and then social media tells us be kind and care on other loved ones. If we weren't on this fucker, we'd be caring about our loved ones in the first place. We've all been almost trained to the fact where I'm like, I can look at my friend and someone I like, and I would like all their pictures. I'll write under the captions, yeah, bruv, you looking sick. Love the kids, beautiful kids. If they phone me, I'm like, this he don't respect me at all. I'll never like this guy. Because that's how the kind of rift has been kind of drifted between us. So yeah, it's such a strange phenomenon now.
And I also find that thing as well is like that putting that stuff on there, if it's to do with mental health or a problem or something, it becomes a vicious cycle. I'm like, oh my god, I don't want to get reinforced for feeling bad. I mean, oh great, okay, now I've got to feel worse now. I've got to top that bad sadness I've put up there now.
Exactly, because it's like and that's the saying, it's an algorithm, because people read it almost as they read it artificial intelligence. It's like, when you call a bank and they go, in a few words, tell us what you need. And you go, bank card, has your card been stolen? Like, everyone's problems are a lot more nuanced than what that you can explain in a few words. But again, artificial intelligence has been trained to pick up on certain keywords and indicators to be able to respond to you. And it's very similar with like social media. You type in stuff, you'll say things, and then like if you mention COVID, then it's like you've got to put the little caveat where this COVID information better be verified and blah, blah, blah. And that's the problem, is that, how can I put it? They say that opinions are like assholes. And everyone's got one. And it's so true. Everyone's got one. But not only that, some of them contain traces of pure shit. And people aren't so ready to open up with them in prison. And also, I say it's because opinions like assholes, because a lot of time your opinion can be full of shit, and it's just based on what you yourself have consumed.
Yeah, exactly.
So consumed an energy. And then by that token, it means that social media forms kind of like a reservoir. The thing with reservoirs is that they also contain sewage, and that sewage, if it's not treated, can pollute the whole reservoir. And that is like how opinions and narratives work on social media. The thing what used to happen before, though, is that, like with your asshole, every time you fart or feel like farting or you feel like shit, you don't just shit every time you feel like it, because you're not a fucking lamb that just does pellets everywhere. Your intestine has a sphincter, which means may not be the right time to release this fart or shit. The thing is, the brain also has the same thing. I don't know if it's called a brain sphincter, because I did business, right? But we do have, like, our brain has a way where it's like, I think crazy shit, but this may not be the right time to say it, because I'm not in a room where people have the context of who I am, or it may not be appropriate, or it might just be like a shit. But the problem with social media is that it's like a laxative that will say stuff that we wouldn't normally say, because there would no way for it to be entertained, and your brain's sphincter would be like, you probably would suck that out before you leave skid marks on, your consciousness. So now people will say shit, and because it's a shit and it's a laxative, they can barely control how it comes out. What happens then is, because it's a public reservoir, it's the way people shit in public toilets versus in their own home is very different. In your own home, you'll wipe the seat and make sure it's like palatable for the people that are close to you. When you take a shit in public, like you've been to a service station, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with people? And that is how social media works, is that it allows people to leave their shit, no matter how disgusting, because they're like, well, everyone takes a shit, so who gives a shit?
That's true.
And that's kind of how it works, I think.
I think you have hit the nail on the head there. There definitely is a brain sphincter, because there is obviously a brain fart, so there has to be a brain sphincter. This is what it is, right?
Exactly. It has to be. And I think that's the point we need to get by, where we go, we're about to. I probably
Hold
should
it.
let it out. Yeah, that's a bad one. Yeah, let me
Hold
hold
it.
it. Yeah, I'll hold it. Yeah, that's the problem is that we're not at the point. We're at the point where like before you go, hold it, get home because I don't want to shit in the train station. You wouldn't do that, or like because you know how you'd be viewed in the same way. Like I can't shit in public because I know I'd be viewed. The problem is with social media is that the gift of anonymity is that like you can take a shit but no one knows who it is. So it's almost like pigeon shit. That's why Twitter's a bird, innit? Because when birds shit, you can't really catch them.
Very true, very true. So when you first started doing your skits in school, was that from primary school? You allowed to do it? The registration, is it?
Yeah, we'd have like the school assembly and stuff, and then what happened was that I started kind of gaining popularity. So in school, he'd be like, and now he'd be like, then you can do another one and do another one.
What was the first skit, Dane?
The first one was it was about recycling. So my school was trying to encourage. It was around the early 90s, like Captain Planet and stuff, and people and CFCs and stuff. Yeah, and the skit was I was an old Caribbean man. I was basically sitting in my window, going mental at my neighbours for not recycling properly. And then looking at my kids. So basically I was just like a Caribbean old man eco-warrior, just screaming at my window for everyone to clean up after themselves. And, being the only black kid in my class. My twin sister was in another class, but like, again, it's like, for kids, it's like, your experience in other multiculturalism was kind of like, it's like the Harvest Festival. And it's like, right, kids, whatever, one Caribbean day, you bring in some milk, you bring in a coconut. Well, what about you then? What about your family? Coconut? What do you guys make? And I'll be like, I don't know. And then so you bring all the stuff in and they're like, what about you then? Ackee and saltfish? I'm like, we don't eat that.
Yeah.
So for kids, when I was like giving them, for me, I think subconsciously, I've already created the image of like seeing my dad and his friends and my grandmother's friends. So that's what I was channeling with that. Because when I was younger, my family would spend a lot of time up north and I'd spend a lot of time at my grandmother's house, which I feel again allowed me to kind of discover my funny bone because I'd sit with first generation Caribbeans who've moved to like a textile town and they were all talking about their experiences of racism, particularly from like the working class, which is more racial rhetoric, I should say. At the time, it was seen as, I guess because there's the paternalistic effect where even Caribbean immigrants from the British West Indies would have like a stiff upper lip, so they wouldn't be like, oh my god, I can't handle this. Their way of processing it was they would laugh about it. So I kind of would sit there and be like, I love that because obviously the depiction of racism as it was shown like in America when films of Mississippi Burning, it was so grave and it was like, my god, like I can barely focus on like the level or the gravity of like the sorrow here. Whereas like to see these old Caribbean people who kind of like brush off their soldier and were like, yeah, whatever, like the lady can barely smell herself and blah blah, and they all found ways where it was kind of like they allowed me to see an alternate narrative from black people rather than internalizing like self-hatred. They kind of it was just more ridicule and they, rather than tears, it was like rolled eyes and laughter.
They like jujitsu'd it, like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what they would do a lot of the time. So I would sit there and take that in, I think, and be like, oh, okay, cool, this is much more effective. And I like it because they're talking about very traumatic experiences, but they're all laughing about it. So I was like, this is cool, this is the way you go about it. So I guess I kind of picked up from my grandmother and her friends. Yeah, that was the kind of first skit I did, was like me being like an old dude telling people to recycle and just be better people. People loved it.
I mean, it sounds like your family as well had just like a storytelling sort of thing, kind of, oh, this is what happened to me, and they're just making like jokes about whatever the awful situation happened and just getting carried away with it and just got, it was like, oh, then he did this and then whatever it is. And then you pick that up and then everyone has that like kind of, I guess, betters the next story in that kind of like family environment. Is that what it is?
Yeah, a combination of that. But I think it's more a platonic paradigm where it's like my grandmother's friends. I think with families, I think people are very sensitive to being vocal about their trauma because, as I said, if you are speaking to your kids about direct familial trauma, that can give them very much a complex. Yeah. So I think what people do instead is that but then by the same token, I guess because you experience that trauma, your friends within that community are almost like family anyway. But I guess the situation is very different where you're talking to your equal peers. So because you're maybe of a similar age and there's not the same duty of dependency, they can be a bit more free about it. Like your kids kind of depend on you to keep them safe and there's a certain level of stability that your family craves from you. So I guess as an adult or as an authoritarian figure, you can't be like, I'm doing my best, but white people are trying to kill me too. Because then people are like, what the fuck? So because that's the thing, like I think that was the epiphany I had, is that when I would begin to research like how racism worked institutionally, structurally, I was like, well, fucking hell, man. And my parents both have jobs. How do they manage that? So rather than go home and be like, mum and dad, they hate me. Like I in my head, like I'm like, they're like, well, if you think that's bad, this is. I'm like, mum, the teacher kicks me out of the class. Like, my mum's geography teacher told her to go back and swing in the trees like a monkey, innit? So for me, it's like, I can't really be like, mum, I'm having a bad time at school. Because she's like, the fact that you're able to even go to school and stay in the same class as your white counterparts represents a aesthetic I could have only dreamed of, Dane. And I'm aware of, do you know what I mean? So I'm aware of that too.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of that too. So it's like, I don't want to come home with this bullshit. Like,
No.
I kind of, and really for me, it's like, do you know what? I respect that they did that. And so I'm like, whatever I experience, as a parent, my covenant with you is I don't want you to be, as a parent, laying in your bed thinking my fucking baby's out there and they're trying to kill my baby. So I don't want them to, when kids like they fall off bikes and stuff, when they begin to assert their independence, it's like, I'm okay. So with me and my parents, it's like I want them to be like, you've been through the shit too. I'm okay. You get on with what you need to get on with. I handled this myself. So it was like you grow up quite fast. But then I was privileged to have people around me that had experienced this firsthand, and so I was very early on well versed in how to compete with that, and so and people that had learned effective coping mechanisms, so that was very much passed on to me. And I think it's tough for a lot of immigrants and people of color because it's something you obviously want to shield your kids from, but sometimes that can be counterproductive because then when they experience it, they're not able to process and rationalize or deal with it very well. But I don't understand why parents want to shelter their children from such a whole phenomenon. For me, I guess, like with most parents, my parents didn't necessarily have the choice, but I had enough tools around me where I would know how to deal with it. And again, I feel like it's a part of my moral and artistic obligation is to take that journey and to take that education and make it permeate my material and to share it with my audience stuff as well. Because, it's real comedy, the idea is to make you feel good. And I feel like, the more the taboo and the more challenging, divisive the subjects you're taking and subverting them for the purpose of laughter, then you can really effectively help people.
Yeah, damn right. It's more meaty. I mean, you're building on what your parents have done as well. You're always going to be supported by your past experiences of your family, and it's all those political situations are relative to the way culture is moving forward. Hopefully, and therefore you couldn't really compete with that, or just learn from the tools you said that they've given you.
Yeah, exactly, man. And also like just in a way, man. Like I guess it's just a thank you. It really is. I feel like art can definitely be used to chronicle a journey. And I guess, my experience, like I said to you earlier, like my experience of racism isn't sacrosanct or personal to myself. There are people who have experienced much worse than me, who have then gone on to probably do a lot more expansive and much more effective humanitarian work, not just in the form of art, but just in the form of activism that have allowed for me to realize the positions that I'm in. So for me, it's like, there's no monetary way I can pay those people back, but the least I can do is at least exalt them in the work that I do, and continue that journey. It's if you a lot of time if you are the offspring of or the descendants of an oppressed people, one of the largest parts of your oppression is the erasure of your history and the reduction of your history and the reduction of your contribution to the collective consciousness. So I try and do stuff where I'm kind of like, I remember the people that went before me, and part of me is kind of like, I guess hopefully they can kind of hear it, or at least if they've not had the opportunity to tell this story, like I feel obviously my consciousness and all of our beings are an amalgam of our own individual consciousness, the cultural suggestion and influence we have, as well as the social influence suggestion we have, our interaction with other human beings, and our humanitarian experiences. And so I guess I want that all to be a part of what I do with work, is that 20, 50 years, 100 years down the line, somebody who looks like me will want to know what things were like, and I just want to be able to kind of give them an accurate thing and let them know. And it's the whole thing is like the whole endeavor with all art is, art is, I guess, what defines our humanity versus our other mammal beings and stuff. This is what separates. I think this is what separates us from the animals. Really, is that we take our instincts and inclinations and we can make them into something tangible. Yeah, man, I think it's just a part of my human experiences that I have to kind of imprint on other human beings. It's the best way I know how to do it. And I guess most of the thoughts that do come to me in my quantum of solace are to fuel the art that I create, to make other people know they're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, one absolute gift, as well as what I was saying before, it's your, comedy's your strength and also your weakness, but it's that saying that you're not completely have one foot in either camp of your West African heritage, you're saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say my family, my parents are from Grenada, but I'd say ancestrally, my family would be from what is now referred to as Nigeria. So we don't originate from the Igbo tribe, but then my dad's grandfather is Scottish. So I mean, there's a number of different parallels and there's a number of different experiences that kind of intersect there, and some are bigger or smaller than others. But for me, I guess the main thing is that it's being open to all of those things and open those experiences, because then it's like, if you can think about those and consider those, again, it's for the purpose of, it means I do have more commonality with human beings that would be suggested on a superficial level.
Yeah, that's an awful lot to cram into a
Exactly.
bit, which is great, which is wonderful. I mean, that's the challenge, mate. And you seem to be successfully doing it, man. That's a wonderful thing to do, man. I love the narrative sounds so pretentious, but like, you know, the sort of the heart behind what you are doing with your shows.
Yeah, man. It's because it really is because for no other reason than that. Like I had no plans as growing up, even as an adult, to be able to do something I love for a living. I really didn't. So for me, it's just like, if I can fucking do this, anyone can do this. And that's not just a function of competence. It's like, it's just, there is no human being that I know that doesn't entertain fantasy or daydream or imagine or conceive in their own mind. Everyone has that in one way or another. Now, depending on what you are perceiving, then how hard is it to achieve what you actually want? And then it's a question of why you actually want it. And it's so, you know, I guess I was able to make my reality into my dream. And so and I guess I look at that, like the line between those, I guess it's not that far away. Like, you know, you when you go to sleep, and I always say this, like when I speak about like what I'm trying to achieve, I suppose, is that when you're dreaming as a person, you don't interpret your dream as yourself until you wake up. You experience a dream in your consciousness. And when you're doing that, you are not beholden to any physical laws such as time, space, height, gravity. You're not subject to any of those. It's only when you wake up, within a nanosecond, you remember, my name's Winter, I'm a white male, I'm straight, but you know, and it's not like you're reminding yourself, it's just, that's the part of your conscious brain coming back to life. Your subconscious brain does not interpret things along those same lines of identity politics. It just sees things.
Yeah.
So, which means that life is but a dream, because we all see and interpret it all in the same way.
Yeah.
And when we wake up, we're all gonna when the dream ends, everyone will be in the exact same state. And so these are states at which all human beings are exactly the same. When they wake up, just before they go to sleep, and before you die.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, if I can capture those periods at the human state or the human mind, that is where art is. And I think, and like I said, so for me, it's like, if I can make a dream reality, then anyone can. And I think, as a species and as a race, and you know, as we've seen the way the world has changed with COVID and people working from home and you know, jobs that we thought we depended on for our economy to continue thriving, we're still able to survive. It means there is something more to our lives than going to work and going home. I guess I just want everyone to kind of realize that, not just because it's like, you know, for the sake of principle, but even naturally as well. Like, you know, we're gonna get to a point whereby if you are someone who believes in the tenets of capitalism, automation means that a labor force that is human will no longer be required, and so you'll need something else by which to define your life. In the same way that, like, if it's proven that, you know, people don't have to be cisgender in order for them to procreate or raise a family, which I don't necessarily mean is the case, there are other methods by which, you know, biological reproduction, that you can have a family. It means just using that alone to define and to qualify your existence as a human being will have to change. I think probes are landing on Mars now. Like, landing on Mars is now a reality within our lives. You know, despite all of our religious and theological texts revolving around our experience on Earth, we're all already now poised to potentially leave Earth, which means being on Earth and all of these bases by which we quantify our human experience are going to change. The only constant we have is our consciousness. So my thing is, for people, is that once you get up there, we'll see each other there. And it's just fucking fun. I like having fun, laughing, meeting new people, traveling the world. Like, these are like I said, these are the things that I think are the best parts of the human experience, is seeing different parts of the world. Like, you know, creating something in your mind and making it something other people can create. Like, I understand that. Like, if we can make like, you know, understanding between human beings that doesn't require like suggestion from an external source or like some kind of fear-based need for understanding, like we have to be like this because other people are different to us and we should be scared. If we can have human connection that's not stems from fear and stuff like that, like, this is how we're going to evolve into our next stage. So I just want to be a part of the wave, man, or just be a brick in the wall.
That's great. That's expansive thinking and expansive connected thinking, which is just fueling and giving all your material, all your thoughts momentum, which is great. Because as you say, get up in the morning, you have that baseline, and then you just shackle yourself with all these other things that are labels that are put onto you, isn't it?
Exactly what you think you should be doing and what you're supposed to do today and all this other stuff. But like in that dream, you didn't mind who you were and how people perceived you, and you were just experiencing it as a being of consciousness. And that's why human beings crave dreaming so much. That's why we like it so much. It's because we all appreciate the state. That's why I think people enjoy social media. There's a lot of tenets of it that like allow us to like be in a state where we are not limited by our form. We can reimagine ourselves and our gender. We can reimagine. So people understand that. But it's like by that same token, if artificial intelligence is growing and it understands that there is something greater than worrying about what how we separate ourselves, it's not it might be a matter of time before we see something other than ourselves or something superior to ourselves begin to move, or we begin to become something different to ourselves. You have to appear to it. Because even myself, it's like what Dane as a comedian has written and performed in my body of work doesn't stop with me. Like that itself is the accumulation of the positive influences I've got from my comedic predecessors, people that have influenced me, people that have influenced me positively and negatively. And they began with an ideology that I've been able to take and run with that and be like, oh, okay, cool, let me carry that on. That's the thing with the Bible, is that like, I guess, it was a number of different books because people were interpreting phenomena and giving their account of it. And then someone was like, oh, cool, this is happening, and continuing to chronicle it. So I guess I'm just, writing now for the day. And I hope that somebody will take some of these findings and some of these ideas and they will have proud of those thinkings and will continue that train of thought and that thread and continue with that as well, man. So it's like, it's kind of like, rather than owning comedy or having comedy or making comedy, I'm experiencing it.
Wow.
And so and that should be with most of the human experiences. Like things with, like even with human beings, like our problem with things with love and stuff like that is that we think about love as a possession. Like I had love and someone loved me, then they've gone away and taken love away. You don't own love. Like it's something you get to experience. Because imagine how would you feel if you really experienced love? You know that holding something that beautiful from other human beings is a terrible way to behave. Because if it's as good as you say that it's led you to this level of sorrow, why would you deprive somebody else of that? It's like for me, like I look at something like heartbreak, for example. It's like no one who had a broken heart could oppose people falling in love based on their sexual orientation. Because if you juxtapose your speculative fear about the culture of gay people, blood, if it didn't feel as worse as you felt when you were crying in your own fucking pillow by yourself, in your underwear, crusted over from your own semen, cranking into a pot of yogurt, bro, then unless you want everyone to feel that way, if that felt good to you, then fair enough. But that didn't feel good to you, so why would you want anyone else to feel that way?
Yeah.
Like having my heart broken for me is like, at first it's like, this is terrible that I've lost something within me. But the idea is that like, if it's as good as you say, that's something bigger than one person can hold. Because like, for example, I'm gonna die one day, and the person I love is gonna die one day. So you'd lose it in that respect anyway. So love can't be a tangible thing that you hold on to and is rigid, because then you'd lose it and then you're going to lose it anyway. By it being an experience that you get to experience and then relay that experience to other people, then everyone gets to share in it. Yeah. Not only that, then even when you're not here, this love that you've been able to articulate and pass to someone else outlives you. So even though you're not here anymore, it's like, well, Dane's not here, but we still love him. And then by being taught about love, I get to pass it on to somebody else. So it's an experience. And so this is why, back to what we said at the beginning, I understand why now there was never a need for a concept of want.
No, like concept never needed for a concept of wanting to.
Of wanting something.
Oh yeah, okay, right.
Yeah, as soon as you want something, then it's like you become fearful or you become resentful because somebody else has it. Whereas if it's like you're open to experiences, then there will never be, because they say happiness is expectation, reality minus expectation. Well, if you don't want, comes with a level of expectation. Acceptance as well. That's what it is. I totally get. You don't need. Because that you just ruin it. It's like trying to hold on to like a fistful of sand, isn't it? You're trying the harder you squeeze it, the more it just seems to slip through your fingers. Exactly. Whereas if you experience it, experiences then could begin then to fill up your memory. And see, once you have a memory and once you are training within your consciousness to trust in your consciousness and spend enough time within it, you can always return to the state of the feeling you had when you had that sand in your hand. Because remember, your hand will age, it will wisen, your hand may fall off, your nerves won't be as strong as they used to be, but your mind and your consciousness remains at a constant. The reason we know this is because when you experience trauma, whatever age you're at, when you return to that point to recount that trauma, the feelings are still the same. They don't age. So by the same token, you can take that positively and kind of be like, I remember what that was like. which is why it's like, for me, it's like when people are like, what's your best gig? It's like, there's not really a best gig because every gig was good for a different reason. And it's all contributing towards this journey where I still get to do what I enjoy.
Yeah. That's it. So, and you're already doing it. There's no success. You're already, well, there is success because you're already there. You're already doing it. That's it. There's no kind of reaching for that next thing. It's only just building upon the success you've already have within.
Yeah, well, exactly that. Yeah,
And so,
exactly.
so like Dane, you've performed 5 shows. Is that right? Black Britain.
Yeah, 5 shows. So I've done Citizen Dane, Discussions About Nothing and Everything, Reasonable Doubts, Gold, Oil and Drugs, and now the Chocolate Chip.
And which is your favourite?
I think they're all, again, it's like I like them for different reasons. But I would say the most recent show I've done, the Chocolate Chip, has been my most unapologetic one. I think it's been the one where I've definitely stood into myself and been unabashed and part my views and discussing issues. And to be funny, ironically, like, it's been very rewarding because even though I wasn't able to complete the tour in 2020, the subject matter was exactly on the nose of all of the social flux we've seen here and in the States, within the Western world. So all of the more intense taboo discussions we've been having was exactly what the show was about. So it's been very helpful to profile and stuff, and people's ears are a lot more receptive to this conversation.
That's good. So like you got nominated 2 years into your comedy career, right, for Best Newcomer at the Edinburgh Comedy Award, and like, I mean, that's incredible. Like 2 years in, I mean, it sounds like you just came out of like, just chatting to, absorbing all these tools and stuff and straight into, comedy. I'm doing it. 2 years. That's amazing. That's such a massive leap of skill, maybe a feat of progression.
Yeah, I think it kind of all kind of works together. But I think for me, it was a mixture of both. But it was just really resolving within myself that like you finally get an hour to talk about yourself in your own TV show, like the people that you've watched and worshipped and idolized, and it's like, let's just do it. Let's throw everything at it, man. It was, definitely on reflection, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really hope, I really need to make sure I return to that space where it was like, this was the first time you get to say what you want to say, how you think, and everybody gets to listen. The first show especially, and my work, it was really fun, and it's because, and I guess I was able to excel because I'd had some previous experience with gigs before, and so I was returning to actually just do comedy in earnest. And again, it was like, for me, the excitement about performing comedy is like, if you're a kid and you have crutches because you have like a spinal problem, and then one day you get a brace and you can walk. Like that's how it feels to me. It's like imagine you're telling people what you want to tell them for a living now. It's not just I do it for fun in school and stuff like that. Like you can actually make a living from this. Yeah. Let's give it a go, and if it doesn't work, then at least you tried, and that answers an existential question I'll have, and I won't arrive at midlife being like, well, if only I did this more of my life. I just never wanted to be that person. Yeah.
Okay, right. So from what you've all just been telling me for the last hour or so, like in comedy, right, when you first started, did you have like a model of what you were as you could? I asked this question to everyone I come having the show. Basically, Sean Mio, right? You know Sean Mio?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
He sees himself when he goes on stage as a gunslinger. Now, you don't have to be, you could be an animal, a creature, a job, or a mixture of any of those things. I've had PCSOs on here. So what do you see yourself as anything like? Take your time if you don't have one.
Gunslinger one's a good one, but yeah, it's kind of, I suppose it'd be I like to say astronaut.
Oh yeah, right.
On the astral plane.
Great.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, really trying to see what's going on, not just on the surface with the audience, but what's going on in their heads. And so, I see myself as an astronaut on an astral plane. So as I was saying to you before about like trying to capture people in that dream state, it's like, I tether onto reality, and then I go along with them and just like, take a walk inside their minds. That's what I'm trying to do. And I bring them along as well. So
it's great. And so a traveller, an astronaut traveller, like seeing different lands and taking everyone with you.
Exactly,
It's great. Terraforming new planets.
Because, and the thing is, all of this stuff, that's the great thing, because what's within human consciousness where, concept and mind and ideology begins, anything is possible. You're always going to have a thread. Like this is an ongoing journey. So that's why it's like, it's like Star Trek kind of.
Are you into Star Trek and sci-fi?
A little bit. I think aboard sci-fi. Star Trek, I do enjoy Star Trek and what it's about, but I probably was more into the whole Star Wars thing, I guess, because I guess Star Wars, in a way, emphasizes more about spirituality and philosophy, as well as the act of, like, other stars and stuff like that, is that it's, I guess, I like the fact that within Star Wars, even though they're dealing with the expansive universe and the same kind of aesthetic as Star Trek, the ability to be very powerful within that universe is based on your spirituality. Yeah.
That's it. Was it so? So like you've written sitcoms and like you wrote Sunny D and what's the other one you wrote? What was the other one you wrote?
Bamous.
Bamous, yeah. So like and like you writing any more sitcoms at the moment, or are you just?
There's a few things I'm working on at the moment. Currently speaking to some execs in America, potentially about a free format and an existing idea. But yeah, all different ideas buzzing, and I think at this stage now, especially given the last year, I'm really just thinking of other ways or other aesthetics to kind of represent creative vision. There's so much more you can do now. We're not really limited to writing the 30-minute episodes now, like with digital media and stuff. You can really do anything. So it really, for me, it's more about just learning the proper timing and being able to apply. Well, I just want to apply the same quality to stand up that I do to some newer creative endeavors as well. So yeah, so I'm trying a number of different things, man. But it's just whatever's funny and what works is what I'll give it a go.
Okay, and so any final thoughts of anyone wanting to get into stand-up comedy?
Only do it if you like it.
Right.
If you want to be rich and famous, you can become rich and famous. Then it will become boring, and that's it. Or I would say, and my other piece of advice would be, that comedy is not just about making people laugh. It's about finding the joy in this world and find the laughter in this world. And that's not the same thing as being funny. So, but I'd say my main piece of advice to most people would be just do it because you love it. Like any kind of art form. That's
great. And Dane, where can we find you?
You can find me on all your socials. I'm around on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook. You can find me on my podcast, which is called Dane Baptiste Questions Everything. Yep. That's exactly what it says on the tin. Or if you haven't already, please do check out Bamous on the BBC iPlayer right now, please.
Well, Dane Baptiste, thank you so much for spending the last hour or so of your time with me. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And that was episode 119 with the comedian, podcaster, TV writer, Dane Baptiste. His podcast is still available where you get all good podcasts, and it's called Dane Baptiste Questions Everything. He did 218 episodes and it's just finished, unfortunately, a few months ago. But go and check it out. He's an absolutely brilliant comedian as well. He's written like a couple of TV sitcoms. You can find them online. Just type in Dane Baptiste and loads of stuff will pop up, I'm sure. And he says some brilliant things about comedy, some absolute gems. And he said that comedy is his armour, his pillow, his crutch. It's his jet engine. It fuels him, it powers him through. And when I asked him what he thought of himself, like as a comedian, or how he saw himself, he says he's an astronaut. Very tricky, going boldly where no one's gone before, I guess, But he's brilliant. What a brilliant comedian he was. And for the potentially last episode I'll do for quite a while. I hope you've enjoyed these episodes. Thank you to Dane. Thank you to all the 117 other guests I've had on this podcast. Thank you for Stu for having fun with me on the very beginning. I think that one is still around for you to listen to. And as Dane said in this last podcast, if I can make my dream a reality, I can make my reality a dream. That's amazing. And rather than owning comedy, you experience it. It's similar to what Trevor Locke said. Just stay connected. Stay connected because you can't have enough comedy when you're in your head trying to think of a line. There will never be enough. You got to stay connected, stay there, stay riding that wave. But look, that was Dane Baptiste. He's done 2 TV sitcoms, one called Sunny D, the other one called Bamous. And he's also done a podcast, as I say, called Dane Baptiste Questions Everything. Go and find him, go follow him, go and see when his next live day is. Go and check it out. Now look, I say this will be the last podcast I do for a while because I'm a bit burnt out with it, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. I've got other things to do. And if I find someone that I really think would be a wonderful guest, because I really don't think I could do any better than this podcast that I had with Dane, it just flowed so nicely. And for a while, I'm just going to leave it there. I don't want to mess it up. It felt perfect. Why mess it up? Finish at the top, right? But if I find another guest that will be equally brilliant as Dane and I'd like to spend another hour or so of my life with, and then 3 hours of my life editing, I will put this on this podcast, the Comedy Defect podcast. And you can still find me. I'm on all those places like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I'm there at Winter Dominus. That's WinterDominus. And you can find the Comedy Defect group. Join it. You'll find podcasts that are coming up if there is another one coming. And you'll also find my live gig dates. You can also find me there on Twitter and all those places that I'll be posting my live gig dates up there. I'm the first Tuesday of the month in Redbourne. That is every month, the first Tuesday. And I will be hosting those nights. So we have people that have been on Live at the Apollo. People are breaking into TV. People are just starting out in comedy. So that will be happening in Hertfordshire. I'm also going to have 2 more gigs coming up in Hertfordshire as well. But you'll see those dates coming up on all those places I mentioned before. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, if you want to come see that live stuff as well. Because that's where comedy happens, the live stuff. This has been so fun to do this podcast. I've loved every minute of doing this podcast. Some really wonderful laughs I've had. It got me through the lockdown, and editing it got me through breaking my legs in August 2023. Right. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you still enjoy it, share your favorite episode. Tell people where we are and what we're up to. And until then, until the next episode, maybe 120, I hope you keep going, keep doing comedy, keep enjoying it. Come see me at the gigs in Hertfordshire if you fancy it. And if not, I'll see you on the circuit. Take care.